Wes says that Jesus was audaciously going around claiming to be God himself. I don't think that's true. Nowhere in Mark, Matthew, or Luke does Jesus actually claim to be God in his own words.
For several videos now, we've been dismantling Alex O'Connor's bad takes on Jesus' self-claims to be God. Now, let's take a look at Mark 2, 1 through 12, where Jesus doesn't just hint at being God, he flat out demonstrates it. Jesus is teaching in a packed house when 4 guys lower their paralyzed friend through the roof, and instead of healing him immediately, Jesus drops a bombshell. Son, your sins are forgiven. Cue the scribes freaking out. He's blaspheming. Who can forgive sins but God alone? And they weren't wrong. In the Old Testament, even the greatest prophets, Moses, Isaiah, Elijah, never forgave sins directly. Priests could offer sacrifices, but only as an acknowledgement of God's forgiveness. So when Jesus bypasses the temple system and declares sins forgiven on the spot, he's not being unclear, he's making a divine claim. Cue Bart Ehrman and Alex O'Connor scrambling for damage control.
He says that as the Father has sent me, so now I send you. We must think that surely the authority that Jesus has been given to forgive sins in this respect is given to him in the same way that he gives it to his disciples. That is not bestowing divinity upon them, but just the authority to forgive sins and nothing more.
I agree with that. And it's also important to note that Jesus doesn't say, I forgive your sins.
Yes.
He says, your sins are forgiven. And surely people don't think that when a priest pronounced forgiveness of sins, that he's claiming to be God. If he says your sins are forgiven, and so that's why I think it's been a bestowed authority. But I completely agree. It doesn't mean that everybody who pronounces forgiveness of sins is thereby claiming to be God.
Nice try, but that's not how the scribes understood it. If Jesus were just announcing God's forgiveness, they wouldn't have accused him of blasphemy. Here's the problem. Jesus never acts as a priest. He's not in the temple. He's not offering sacrifices. He's not from the tribe of Levi. Instead, he declares, but I want you to know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. Authority, not permission, not a priestly function. And this Son of Man title, it's straight out of Daniel 7:13 through 14, where the Son of Man is given sovereign power, divine glory, and eternal dominion. Straightforward reading of the text shows that the Son of Man in Daniel 7 shares God's throne and all the authority behind it. If Jesus were just speaking on God's behalf, the scribes would have said, that's the temple's job. Instead, they charge him with blasphemy because Jesus is claiming divine authority, which in Jewish tradition was an offense worthy of death. And does Jesus back down? No, he proves it. He says, I tell you, get up, take your mat, and go home. And the man immediately walks. Jesus said this is how they'd know that he had the authority to forgive sins. The Old Testament consistently pairs the forgiveness of sins and healing together as part of what God does. Psalm 103, 2 through 3 says, Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits, who forgives all your iniquity and heals all your diseases. O'Connor clings to John 20:23, thinking that it weakens Jesus' claim, but there's a major flaw here. Delegated authority doesn't make the original power any less divine. A king sending messengers doesn't lose his sovereignty. The authority still comes from him. And let's be real, Alex and Bart know full well that John's gospel is the strongest on Jesus' divinity. If they want to appeal to John, they can't resort to cherry picking. O'Connor and Ehrman can twist Mark 2 all they want, but the evidence is very clear. Jesus forgives sins because he is God.